Good day, everybody. We are going to finish off week 11 and week 12. Each of the week 11 and 12 slides. Next week, we'll finish up week 13 and we're done. So, let's get into it. International trade disputes. What's an international trade dispute? The World Trade Organization is one of the main ways to settle international trade disputes. So, international trade dispute, basically, we spoke about this before. So, if you have an issue with a company you're doing business with overseas, or two countries are having issues with trade that they're doing overseas, or between each country, that's a trade, and something happens, that's a trade dispute. So the World Trade Organization is the main way to settle international trade disputes. Resolving trade disputes is one of the core activities of the WTO, and we know what WTO is, already talked about it. A dispute arises when a member government believes another member government is violating an agreement or a commitment that it has made in the WTO. The WTO has one of the most active international dispute settlement mechanisms in the world. Okay, so like I said, WTO is the way that countries and companies do business with each other, and they set the rules, and they're the ones who are brought in if there is an issue. So there are three types of international trade dispute resolutions. Okay, so how do you come and um, fix up an issue that is occurring um, between two companies or two countries or whatever? So the first thing is mediation, right? If it's a company, it's mediation. Countries are different; they go through the WTO. When it comes to companies, there's three ways. You got mediation, non-binding arbitration, and binding arbitration. So mediation basically is when you have two companies, A and B, that are fighting, and someone comes in the middle, a mediator comes in the middle and tries to get them to come to a settlement. Non-binding arbitration. So it basically is non-binding. The arbitrator's award is advisory and can be final only if accepted by the parties. Binding arbitration is when the decision is final, can be enforced by a court, and can only be appealed on very narrow grounds. So, what's the difference between mediation and arbitration? So, mediator basically helps parties negotiate a settlement that will satisfy all the parties. A mediator does not decide a dispute. An arbitrator functions more like a judge, deciding the outcome of a dispute based on evidence and law presented in arbitration. Arbitration is binding, and the outcome can be enforced like a court order. Parties must agree to arbitrate and must sign an arbitration agreement. Okay, very simple. What's litigation then? So we figured out what mediation is, what arbitration is. What's litigation? So litigation is where a judge or jury decides the case instead of an arbitrator. So instead of having someone come in and be an arbitrator to decide what happens, people have to sign an agreement, right? Two companies sign an agreement to say, okay, we're going to go into arbitration. Then that third party comes in, the arbitrator comes in and says, okay, this is what's going to happen. It could be binding, could be non-binding. Okay. Litigation is where you have to go through the whole situation, where like you have the court, the jury, all that stuff. It involves more formalized rules than arbitration. Um, In arbitration and litigation, one party is typically awarded money, and unlike in mediation, there is less opportunity for creative resolution. If you have a strong case from a legal perspective, you might prefer litigation. You want to litigate the dispute rather than arbitrate. This is because judges and juries are bound to follow the law. So if you have something, you know that this person broke the law, this company broke the law, and you don't want to arbitrate, you don't want to have someone come in and trying to give, for a fact that these guys broke the law, go to litigation, because the judge and jury will only do what's based off the law. They won't do what the arbitrator thinks is correct. This is because judgment while arbitrators must base their decision on the law, they also have little more leeway to reach an equitable result. So even if someone broke the law, an arbitrator can say, well, why don't we do this and this and this, and you could still move forward with it. In that regard, decisions by a judge jury are going to have a better chance of being appealed than the decision of an arbitrator. So That's the difference between litigation and arbitration and mediation. Corporate governance. We talked about this as well, I'm sure. Corporate governance is a system of rules, policies, and practices that dictate how a company's board of directors manages and oversees the operation of a company. Corporate governance includes principles of transparency, accountability, and security. Poor corporate governance, at best, leads to a company failing to achieve its stated goals, and at worst, can lead to the collapse of the company and significant financial losses for shareholders. Corporate governance, basically, rules, policies, all that stuff that the board of directors or whoever manages the company puts together so that employees and everyone who's working there can follow. The 4 P's of corporate governance: people, purpose, process, and performance. So obviously people come first because no company can run without people, right? Purpose: every piece of governance exists for a purpose and to achieve a purpose. Processes are refined over time in order to consistently achieve their purpose, right? So you have your people, right? You have your purpose. And purpose is, okay, you have your people who are working together to build electric cars. Your processes are always going to be changed over time in order to keep your purpose going, right? So to continue making electric cars, you have to be competitive, you have to have the right technology, so your processes will consistently change in order to have the newest and best technology and stuff like that. And then performance, right? The ability to look at the results of a process and determine whether it was successful and then apply those findings to the rest of your organization is one of the primary functions of the governance process. Simple. So let's talk about corruption and international trade. So when you talk about international trade, and you talk about barriers to international trade. When I was doing business and when I was selling oil all over the world, we had an issue come up. Um, we were selling oil at a very to a lot of different clients, but there's one client came to me and said one day, he said, Waleed, we want to buy 3 ships of oil for April, May, and June. We want to buy 3 ships. One of our brokers came to us and said that. And he said, we have a buyer, and he is in Texas. And he's one of the biggest biodiesel producers in Texas. So he came to me and said, Waleed, they want to buy it for 50 points under the market. When I put the numbers into my computer to see how much money we'd make off that, we were making negative money, so we were under break even. So I went to him. I said, man, listen, I'm not going to sell this for under 50 under. They got to be at least 25 over or 50 over. And he said, well, that's not going to happen. And he said, you should definitely pull the trigger now, or else they're going to buy from one of your competitors. And the thing was that these guys knew that they had us in their grasp because we used to produce so much oil, but we didn't have a lot of clients to take that oil. So when they did find us clients, we had to basically give them the oil for whatever price they were asking, that they were willing to pay. This was a huge issue for our business. We were losing millions and millions of dollars. So when I finally took it on, the previous head oil trader was constantly just scared and just kept giving the oil to them, saying, because if our oil inventories, if they grew and if they were too big, then we would lose a ton of money because our plant would have to shut down. It would have to stop production. So then we'd have hundreds of thousands of dollars every day, $100,000. If the plant is down for one day, it costs the business $100,000. So we had to consistently push out this oil. So when I took over, I tried to figure out, I'm like, why are we always getting crushed on these sales? So when the broker called me, said, 50 under, I said, man, I'm not going to do 50 under. I need 50 over. He started saying, well, lead, started scaring us, saying, if you don't sell it, then you'll have so much oil backed up and this and that. He's like, we won't have nowhere else to put it, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, who's the competition? Like, who else is coming in? He said, Bunge. Bunge's a huge huge food processor. So massive. They're in the billions. So they said Bunge is bringing it in. I said, okay. What's Bunge coming in at? Bunge's coming at 25 under Waleed. So since Bunge's coming at 25 under, you have to go to 50 under in order to get this deal. I said, you know what? I can't go 50 under. Let them take Bunge's thing at 25 under. I'll have to find another place for my oil. And at this point, the head oil trader and everybody was like panicking, right? Everyone's panicking. It was a very stressful situation because you have $35 million on the line. So it was a very stressful situation. He's like, lead man, just do the deal, do the deal, do the. I'm like, no, we're not gonna do the deal because we're gonna lose. He's like, well, Karu's gonna fire us, like our CEO. He's like, our CEO is gonna fire us if we don't get this oil sold. And I said, you know what? Let's just wait. I asked him to go and see if they will do 10 over. If they come at 10 over, we'll take the deal. And then the guy calls me back and says, Waleed, you know, the customer is not willing to budge. And Bunge's still at 25 under. What do you want to do? Do you want to take it or no? I'm sitting there. He's like, you should take it. He's trying to stress me out and tell me I should take it. I'm like, wait. I was like, David, wait. Why are you calling me if Bunge's already offering them 25 under? Why are you even giving me a call? What's the issue? Why are they not taking Bunge's 25 under? Why are they still trying to negotiate with me? And that's when I heard his voice change. He was like, oh, he got nervous. He got scared. So he started going, oh, Waleed, okay, listen. The issue is with Bunge is they send in rail cars. While you send in oil vessels. You send in these big ships. And it's easier for them to offload these ships into their tanks than keep taking like, you know, hundreds and hundreds of rail cars having to offload and offload. It's so much work versus when you just send a ship to their port and they offload right away. I said, okay, what else? He said also Bunge's bringing their oil in from Brazil, and the US has already put tariffs on Brazil, on any type of Brazil seeds. So the cost is a little higher. So I looked at the guy. I started talking to the guy. I said, listen, so you're telling me that the customer only wants our product and we are giving him more convenience and a pretty decent price, but he's still trying to milk us. He's still trying to give us trying to buy our buy our oil at a really. I'm like, what does he think this is? I'm like, and I realized at that point that I had the power in my hands, not him. So I said, you know what? I said, David, tell them that I'm not going to sell my oil under 25 over. If it's not 25 over, I'm not selling it. I put the phone down, and the entire company was just like, you know, running around with their heads cut off like chickens. And later that night, I was at my CEO's house. We're having drinks and stuff, and we're talking and just like we're just trying to understand, you know, what's going on and stuff. I get a call from David. David says, Waleed, the company, the customer is willing to do it at 10 over. Are you willing to do that? I pulled up my laptop, put all the numbers in, 10 over, blah, blah. First time in company history where we saw profits, real profits in the oil sector. And I said, David, lock it in. He locked it in, sent us the contracts, we did the numbers, boom, $35 million. First time in company history. This company's been running for 10 years or something. First time in company history they actually sold an oil ship for a margin. So, long story short, tariffs are huge barriers in global trade. Okay, non-tariff barriers is something like corruption. So it acts as a hidden tariff. A lack of integrity in trade can be just as damaging to trade relations as any legalized restriction. Corruption wreaks direct costs such as skimmed revenue and outright theft, but can also create health and safety risks as officials look the other way on dangerous cargo. Informal payments and corruption add a tax of anywhere from 5 to 10% on the value of company sales in markets where corruption is normalized. Combined, these effects will damage countries' economic welfare over the long run. So One of the issues that I saw personally was there was a guy who made his money and his all his fortune by stealing oil from ships. So when you have a huge oil ship, right, worth like I don't know how many $1,000s, how many millions of dollars, right? Let's say you have 10,000 metric tons in there, taking 100, 200, 500 pounds of oil, they won't catch it because there's so much oil being moved. So what this guy used to do is he'd go in and he'd just fill up drums and drums and drums of oil, steal it, and go sell it to the black market. And he was getting them all for free, right? Because he knew the guys at the port that were doing this corruption type thing, right? So they were stealing oil from these things. And when you're doing the bill of lading and all that stuff, if you're missing maybe 100 metric tons, 200 metric tons, it's not really a sorry a hundred like a 1 ton, not 1 ton's a lot, but if you're losing like 100 pounds, 200 pounds, 500 pounds, it's not that big, so it's not really that big of an issue. But these are guys that they would do that, and they would then sell this corrupted oil into the markets, right? And then the markets, they would sell it at such a low price that all the other competitors were trying to figure out, how is this guy selling so low? How are these people selling so low? So they would try and sell low as well, which ended up having a lot of people go out of business, which then affects the economy because now the taxes are being taken away. So that's basically how it works. So, outsourcing. Outsourcing is a business practice of hiring a party outside a company to perform services. Offshoring is the relocation of a business process from one country to another. So basically, difference between outsourcing and offshoring. So outsourcing is what happens when, like, let's say that a company is building an electric car, or actually what, building a cell phone. They don't know if they want to use the Android or the iOS. Um, Usually it's only Android that's available for everybody. So you're outsourcing to Android to pick up their software and all that stuff to build into your phone. So you'll see your phone is called the Zen G1, um, and you need a platform for it. You would outsource your software and everything from Android. Another way is like how in India a lot of people outsource their call centers, right? Um, or they use offshoring, right? For their call centers in India living in Canada. So if they're in Canada, they'll offshore their part of their business and do it in Canada. Their customer support in Canada. So the difference is offshoring is when you use a different country to do to save your money, like Nike using Vietnam to make their shoes. Outsourcing is you can even do it within your own country. It's doing it within the country. So let's say I'm manufacturing shoes here in Canada, but the soles, I don't manufacture the soles, so I buy it from another company in Hamilton or Mississauga. That's outsourcing. That's the difference between outsourcing and offshoring. It's basically the same thing, but offshoring is when you're doing it from a different country. Cultural diversity and international trade. We all know how important cultural diversity is. You need to be culturally diverse in order to do international business. Obviously, you can't just be someone who's pro America, pro Canada, and blah, 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 and try to do business in China and stuff. It's just not going to work. There's four things to know before doing business in the country. There's four cultural differences in business. Okay, guys, four cultural differences in business are communication, interactions, etiquette in the workplace, and hierarchy, okay, in the organization. So if you're aware of all these differences, you'll be successful in doing business with countries all over the world. Knowing how to communicate, interact, their behaviors, and hierarchy will help you relate to the client and increase your chances of success. It only makes sense, right? If you can speak to someone's language, your chances of success are much higher than if you can't speak the language. If you know how their etiquettes and how they interact and stuff like that, you'll be able to be more increase your chances of success. Guys, life is about success. It's about creating chances and opportunities. Life is about it's about probability, right? So you want to make the probability of your success as high as possible. Now, it's very hard to keep your probability of success high if you're doing things like smoking weed all day, sitting at home, not going to work, not studying, none of that. Your probability of success is pretty low. right? So chances of you becoming successful or chances of you becoming rich are pretty low. Now, if you continue to go to work every morning, you exercise, you eat right, you do this, you do that, all the good things, right? Your probability of success is pretty high, right? You do your work on time, you get to work on time, you get to class on time. Your probability of success, probability of um, of passing your and getting good marks in your school, right? And getting your PR, whatever you guys are looking for, the chances are higher if you're doing all this stuff. So that's basically it. So that's the end of the slides, guys. I will be seeing you guys in class.